Yeah, and like if you start, are you? Well, I mean, yeah, I imagine you get a lot. They don't call yeah, well, you can't show up to the class. You know what I'm saying? That's it. And what it's always been to make it
Welcome, everybody. We're going to be starting in about a minute or so, so please, if you're here with us, grab some pizza. To our Zoom attendees, I'm sorry that you have to watch us eat pizza. It's really good, though. So next time, please try to make it in person. We'll be starting about a minute or so, just letting people get their last-minute bites in and find their way to the room. Thanks. And can I get some thumbs up on the Zoom just to make sure that Sandy, I see Sandy. Can you give me a, okay, so thank you. That's a beautiful thumbs up. Thank you, Sandy.
How long is it? How long is it? What's the big six? You got 1 more week in Japan on your back. Oh, yeah. Welcome back. You go away. Yes. confusing, right? Yeah, I've been bounced around a bit. Yeah, so I've kind of been at the here for, I want to say, yeah, just kind of look at that. Yeah, it's been good. It's fully remote. It's been interesting. I'm trying to get used to that because I've always been on the hybrid kind of work side. But it's cool. There's this WeWork spot in so often. Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're 3 minutes over. We're going to have some time to mingle. I love the mingling. The chatting and the socializing is beautiful. And I want to invite you to socialize after our discussion today, just to make sure that we're on time. I want to thank you all for being here, trucking your way in here before the snow hits. We're supposed to get some snow, I think, later, around 2 or 3, something like that. I'm just going to remind Graham to hit record and remind everybody on Zoom that we are recording, and everybody in the audience as well. We do share our recordings of the events with you all afterwards as well. If you miss anything, any of the brilliance that's going to be shared today, no pressure, Mike. And Kayla too. Kayla's up there. Okay, so if I can ask everybody to have a seat and simmer down in the audience, so our Zoom attendees can hear as well. And I think we're good. Please let us know if there's any issues with the audio. Okay, so we're going to start off the meeting officially. So welcome to our February meeting. We do have meetings. We're going to let Kevin in. Should we let Kevin in? He's part of this the leadership community. He's looking at me. All right, that's fine. Let him in. So we do have meetings regularly during the year. So welcome to our February meeting. We'll have some more information to you all for the March. Yeah, we're into March now, right? March meeting after the event, or if it's not today, it's going to be in a few days over email. So thanks again. If you're in person, please grab pizza. There's a lot, as you can see. So please, but keep in mind we won't be wasting food here at a college. We have a lot of starving students here, so we're going to be serving it out. And hungry professors. My name is Patrick Charlton. I am a professor with the School of Business and Hospitality. We've merged with that department with Algonquin College. I've been here for over 12 years, I believe. That's what my LinkedIn says. I've been part of the community, the Salesforce community, I believe since 2017. We started a little chapter or a student group, maybe later. No, 17. I'm looking at some friendly faces for agreement. The reason I am from a non-tech background, it's management, marketing, sales, entrepreneurship. But as many of you know, Salesforce does have a very large library of open source learning material that we happily share with our students so that they can get their heads wrapped around the ecosystem that is Salesforce and everything else affiliated with that world. Being in a tech town, that really helps with providing students with maybe more meaningful employment. Once they get their degree and certificate, they're able to kind of go into different careers, perhaps that they that opens up the doors, basically. So that's been my affiliation with Salesforce, and just making sure that we're sharing that pathway with them. I'm on the committee leadership group along with Nash. I see Nash here. Sandy's on the Zoom. You might be on the Zoom, and Kevin showed up late. That's okay. We won't judge him. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Myself, right? That's it. Don't think I missed anybody. Okay. You Lang, yeah, I said you. Oh, but you might have thought I said you, right? Okay. Right. Sorry, that's a bad joke. All right. So on with the show. We have invited, Kayla's laughing at least. Kayla, I'm here to entertain all day. So Kayla from Salesforce, the company, is our Salesblazer community manager. and my contact with this new community is called Salesblazer. So this is a Salesblazer edition meeting. I've invited Kayla to do a better job than I at explaining what Salesblazer is about and how we can get more involved and get the most out of it. So that's going to be our agenda to kick off our session today. I've got a clicker here. I'll just press. There we go. We got an agenda. So we're going to talk to Kayla for a few minutes, and then she's going to fly or stick around. Okay, but I know you have a meeting after. Moderate our discussion with Michael Pork, who's going to be our expert on sales operations, and we're going to open up that discussion. We'll then draw the meeting to a close around the 1 o'clock time frame, and we'll have more time to eat, rest, more pizza, talk with each other, socialize, network, etc. Okay, sound good? Yeah? Am I missing anything, Nash? We're good? Oh, thumbs up from Nash. Okay, so sorry. Okay, great. So Kayla, thank you for being here. We'll ask you to unmute and introduce yourself, please. And and thanks again for representing.
Absolutely. Hello, Ottawa. I am so excited to be here today. And thank you to Patrick for including me on the agenda. So my name is Kayla Altman. I am the Senior Manager for Trailblazer Marketing here at Salesforce, and I specifically work to support our sales community called Salesblazer. So what is Salesblazer? Salesblazer is the single destination for sales professionals, including sales reps, AEs, BDRs, sales managers, sales leaders, revenue leaders, revenue operations professionals, sales operations professionals, sales admins. I could go on and on. And together we are building a very large and very robust community for sales. So our goal is to bring together our content, our community, and our products into a single website, which you can find at salesblazer.com. And there you can find relevant information. You can find the latest trails that our Trailhead team is producing for sales professionals, as well as connect with the community within the Trailblazer community groups. So I know that many of you have been in the Salesforce ecosystem for quite a long time, but this community just launched in April of last year. In the 10 months since Salesblazer has been live and active, we have grown to just over 5,000 members, which is an incredible feat. And it just goes to show the power and the enthusiasm of our sales professionals here at Salesforce. So for more information, you can visit salesblazer.com. There you can join the community. You can take a look at our content. We publish new articles pretty much every day related not only to sales best practices, but actually our products and what's new and what's coming. And you can also learn more about our certification for sales representatives, as well as pursue some of the newer Trailhead modules that have been released. So I know that that's a lot of information. So let me go ahead and pause and just see, Patrick, are there any questions or any confused faces in the audience that I can maybe help with?
Yeah, no, thank you, Kayla. Thank you for that information. And it is a lot. However, what's good is, there's always, this is why we're here. We're here to network. And if anybody has any questions with regards to how I operate with Salesblazer, it might be very different from your context of what your role is. Please reach out to me. More than happy to share and probably connect you with Kayla anyway. So one of the questions was, can we reach out to you? Can we just, if we have more? Yeah. As well, I wanted to introduce Jeremy and Graham, who's our expert tech experts on hand with regards to setting up the Zoom and the audio visual. They are managing the chat lines on Zoom. So Zoom attendees, please, if you want to ask a question out loud, please raise your hand or put a chat in the chat line, and Jeremy and Graham are managing that too. So we do have one question in person, so I'll pass the mic now to Nash.
Hey, Kayla. question is about how you see if somebody wants to start career in sales and or change career to be in the Salesblazer realms. What do you see and what you can advise that would be skill set or mindset of those people that will play well in your Salesblazer game? Let's put.
I love this question. Yeah, thank you so much, Nash. Where to start? So I think the community can really help those who are looking to transition into a career in sales. Not only because, as I mentioned, we do have a pretty robust catalog of trailhead modules and available trail mixes that can help you train not just on the Salesforce specific skills like how to use Sales Cloud, but the softer side of sales, right? Relationship selling, prospecting, cold calling, all of those methodologies that we teach newer sales representatives on how to build a successful career. Most recently, actually, we had a question in the Trailblazer community group. It was late last week from an individual who was looking to start a career as a BDR and was looking for a mentor. And it was really enriching to see how the community rallied. So not only were we able to connect him with another community member who is actually on this call right now. Her name is Kristen. So hi, Kristen. Thank you for joining today's Ottawa meeting. But the community at large also swarmed on the post and provided him with some of their guidance and their own experiences for how they got started in sales. So all of that is to say, the best advice that I can offer in summation is to lean into the trailhead trainings that are available, take those trails, earn those badges, but also join our community group, post your questions, post what you're looking for. This is an incredibly generous community. Sales, I think, historically has had a reputation for being very isolated and individualized. But what we've actually seen in the last year is it's actually an incredibly collaborative, supportive, and caring group of people that really just want to make the industry better. So Trailhead and join our Salesblazer community group in the Trailblazer community. I hope I helped, Nash. Let me know if I didn't though.
Yeah, great help and advice. And just for record, because we are recording, Trailhead is free. All resources to learn are free. You just need to invest your time, no money. Time is money, but if you don't have money, you have time, make balance. Go learn and get good at what you're learning and get next job of your dream.
Yeah, I'll do you one better. And thank you, Nash, for calling out that our training is free. But if you're on Trailhead and there's a sales related skill that you don't see there, let me know. I can't guarantee that we can put it into production tomorrow, but the feedback from the community on how we can help you continue to enrich your career is another fantastic output of what we're trying to build. So we're here to help support you and help you grow your career.
Yeah, no, and I can definitely attest to Trailhead, the open source aspect of it as a great gateway to get into either upskilling from the soft skills side, the general knowledge side, and as well have the ability to go deeper into the tech side using Salesforce tools to kind of connect with those soft skills, right? So what I'm seeing with our students here, we're not necessarily they're not taking programs that are tech focused, but they're actually getting very interested in upskilling from the technical side because we're teaching them a lot of the general soft skills side here at the college. So it's interesting to hear the different perspectives, right? Depending on what your experience is. How's the chat room? Okay, we got another question. Do you have time, Kayla, for another question?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, great. Linda?
Excuse me, Pat. I do have a quick question for you. Do you teach Salesforce here in Algonquin? I know maybe not you, but is Salesforce part of the curriculum? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the question is, do we actually teach Salesforce courses at the college? We had in the past, I believe. It was actually a curriculum. I'm not sure if it is anymore. I have just chosen as a professor to introduce Trailhead into my classes, and I do tie it into some of the specific courses that are more tech focused on using the tools. So what's great about Trailhead is and Salesforce is they've created their kind of pathways so that if you want to pursue the certification route, right, which is what we encourage to our students, you can easily kind of find yourself, find your way there. So that's the great thing about Trailhead is it does lead the way. We can talk later about that one too. Yeah. Anybody else have a question for Kayla? Online chat, we're good? Okay. So Kayla, this is great. Thank you so much. And I know that you're going into another meeting. It's actually a Salesblazer community meeting that I'm part of. So please give my best. I got to hang out here. But I look forward to catching up on that.
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks, Ottawa. It's so good to see everybody. Enjoy the meeting.
Thank you so much for being with us. Okay, great. So thanks, Kayla. Okay, so that was great. Thank you. Next up, we got Michael Pork. So Michael, come up into the hot seat.
Green chair.
The green chair. And again, Zoom audience, please, questions, just throw them in the chat or raise your hand. In-person audience, please. This is a community, so less formal, less presentation. We'd like to hear from you. So if there's something we'll start off the discussion. It's going to be about sales operations, and we're gonna kind of lead it off, Mike and I. But we really depend on you to kind of help us drive this conversation, so it means something to you. Okay. So that's the rules of engagement. I'm going to first start by asking Michael Pork, thank you for being here.
Yep.
And I want to ask you to just introduce yourself, give your professional bio, and then we'll get into it.
Sure, yeah. Am I coming in clear, by the way? Yeah, thumbs up, sounds good. Okay, guys, well, hey, my name's Mike. To start, been in Ottawa my whole life, never left, don't know why, but still here. Funnily enough, started out my sort of career journey starting in psychology, believe it or not. Never once really touched any form of technical classes or anything of that nature. After that, kind of bounced around, did a bit of, used to sell TVs and radio equipment back in the day. Eventually sort of moved through the career where I started working at a company called Shopify, which if you're from Ottawa, you're probably very familiar with. Big sort of tech SaaS company. Started out there, actually, this is when I kind of made the transition into doing more tech stuff. I just saw they were a cool company, and I was like, I want to try that out. Why not? And started out doing customer support, right? I've always been like a curious individual and always interested in solving people's problems. So started out literally answering phone calls and emails and chats. And then eventually got into this thing called Salesforce, where they wanted someone who had knowledge to do with support and services and also knew Salesforce. So looked it up. I thought, hey, I could do this. And sure enough, kind of started my career on that team, literally taking meeting notes. So it was just, it was to do with this build, huge build at the time that was more or less running cases and kind of upsell opportunities within Salesforce of that build. And, started getting really curious. Eventually got my admin certification, joined the sort of dev team, as it were, did all that. And then from there, bounced around, did a bit of consulting, jumped into a few different SaaS companies. And now today I'm with another SaaS company called SwapCard, which where I'm working today. So background's always been kind of Salesforce, and I sort of kind of fell into the sort of sales operations piece of things. But yeah, that's where I'm at today.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. And it's really interesting to hear different pathways into the roles we have.
Yep.
I wanted to start, Mike, with the whole, the topic of sales operations. It's a buzzy topic. It's fairly new.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to hear from you, based on your experience, how you would define sales operations.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a very general, broad one that I found. Critical bridge between the sales strategy and its execution, ensuring sales organizations run smoothly and achieves its targets. That's pretty broad. So can you give us maybe your own version?
Sure. I'm torn by the term operations, and for those who have worked in any form of operations or are looking for a career in this field, it really is a catch-all, right? So like that definition was correct. That's essentially what I do and what I'm sure other operations people do. But it's so muddy, especially when you look at the world of, sales operations, rev ops or revenue operations, business operations. And then sometimes you get like a biz ops analyst or a sales ops analyst or things of that nature, right? So it very easily becomes a sort of catch-all of like, just do everything. So it's very important for those who are going to be going into this kind of a career. Make sure you're very aligned with leadership into like what specifically needs to be done, because every company, every business, whether you're in SaaS or whatever other industry, they're going to have very different demands of you. And typically you'll see the demand for an operations person in like a bigger sales team, right? Like if your sales team is 2 people and maybe a VP, you're probably not going to really benefit from an operations person. But as soon as you start scaling, as soon as you start kind of like moving out of that SMB, maybe enterprise market, and growing your sales team, that's where the true value of this lies. And I think one key word in that definition, Pat, that really was interesting was the word bridge, because that is such a key component of like what I do, and I imagine all operations people do, is like you have marketing as one pillar, sales and customer support, all this stuff, like the sort of different teams that you would picture impacting a customer's journey through like a sales life cycle from start to finish, right? These teams oftentimes are doing their own thing, their own motivations, their own, they're just kind of running in sometimes different directions. And an operations person usually touches with all these people and acts as the bridge, right? It connects the dots between all these people. Obviously, a CRM like Salesforce, right, is shared by everyone and used in different capacities. And it's super critical that you're there to listen to everyone and make sure everyone's aligned and, they're running fine, but make sure we're running vaguely in the right direction. So I'd say that definition is pretty accurate, but like with the asterisks that where you go, it's going to look different in terms of the day-to-day responsibilities.
Can you give us an example, Mike?
Yep.
And again, please feel free to jump in. And I'll come and grab you. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking. Can you give us an example of a successful bridge?
Yes.
And maybe can you give us an example of a bridge gone wrong, like the bridge explodes?
Yeah.
Right. So, and maybe how you handled it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I might have more examples of the latter than the former, but and to your point, yes, anyone, feel free to just raise your hand, ask questions. I too tend to talk a lot, so we'll try to be mindful between Patrick and I of any questions. The bridge, i.e., keeping everyone together. In terms of like when it doesn't work, and I'll tell you, this is maybe more a personal sort of thing about me, right? Especially when you join a new company or you're relatively new in this kind of role or an organization, you're very quickly going to be keen to just like start running and figuring stuff out and solving problems. And sometimes you're going to feel like it has to be you, right? So anytime, I can't really think of like specifics, but like where communication breaks down, it's usually because I'm the one that's not effectively communicating. And what I mean by that is because as an operations person, I mentioned it's like a catch-all, you're probably never going to be the expert in one specific thing, right? You got like your VP of sales, you got your VP of marketing. These guys are going to know their orgs very well. But you probably are going to know a big chunk of it, but not to the extent that you need, especially to solve a business problem that touches everything, right? So anytime it's fallen through, it's because I've made assumptions, or I've jumped the gun, or I didn't talk to the right person that I should have. And it really shows sort of at the end when it's like you develop a process and then you have an admin or developer or whatever build it out, or you build it out yourself. And it's not quite to scope. It wasn't quite what it was supposed to solve, or it didn't take into account something that it should have taken into account, or an expectation was there. So The biggest pitfall is like, oops, I forgot to talk to this person about this thing, or I forgot to have like end users look at it. That's so oftentimes when you're running through the gate, you know, and you're excited to like launch said process or product, whatever, that you don't think to have end users look it over and give a thumbs up, you know, like a PO pass, right? So anytime I've noticed pitfalls like that, it's usually due my own, I don't know, lack of awareness in that sense. But you learn from that.
So based on that, have you set up a system now of, you know, like you get burnt,
Yes.
you know, on these situations because oh yeah, I needed to maybe ask a few more questions or meet with other stakeholders. Do you have a kind of a system to help you navigate that now?
Yeah, because I noticed that, and at the start I'm like, oh, isn't this? And then it's kind of after some reflection, it was like, it's me probably. So the analogy I like to use, and again, operations, you do a lot. One big component of that is project management, because a lot of times you're going to be working from project to project, right? The analogy I like to use is like when you're running for a marathon or preparing to run a marathon, right? The first thing you do before you start walking, running, sprinting, is you tie your friggin' shoes, right? Take the time, make sure your shoes are on, make sure they're tied. And what I mean by that is make sure before you do anything, right? You meet with people, you know, start building stuff, whatever, engaging stakeholders, write down, like in whatever project management tool you use, write down what you need to do. Well, like, what are my KPIs? Who do I need to talk to? How often, right? Like set up like a structure for like start to finish, how this is going to work. And it seems like a sort of silly step or like unnecessary or very tempting to skip. Don't do that. Like take the time to plan, right? Otherwise you're going to fall on your face.
I love the analogy of project management with our
It's a good one.
project management coordinator sitting in the room. Project manager.
There you go.
Oh, it's not project manager. Yeah. Okay, but yeah, I'm sure you
like,
deal with a
no
lot of
comment.
projects. No, that's great. No, I love the connection there and trying to foresee the problems before they arise and just build that into the habit, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin?
Hey, Mike. What I'm kind of curious is I've been working with sales and sales operations for many, many years. But I think what you're not really saying, or what are the typical roles that sales operations do compared to like a salesperson, or if you could expand on that, I think that would be very
Sure.
helpful.
Yeah, that's a great call out. I probably should have gotten into more specifics there. So like day to day, what do I do? Honestly, it's meetings, lots of meetings, constantly chatting with folks. A sales operations person typically isn't like in a sales call doing sales stuff, although maybe I wouldn't be surprised if some organizations that were to be the case. In my experience, I'm sort of on the back end, right? The sales reps are doing their things, the SDRs, BDRs are doing their things. You're sort of at this eagle eye viewpoint of supporting these people, right? So anytime there's questions about process, something that isn't working, they'll usually come to me. And then more importantly, it's like, what's next? What do we want to launch for this quarter, Q1, Q2? And oftentimes you're working with like founders and VPs and directors and things like that. So you want to be comfortable working with like some pretty important people who have high expectations of you. So it's a lot of meetings, a lot of planning, a lot of project management. And then once sort of you have that piece in place, it's like designing the solution. You're looking for problems, or you're listening to problems, and using your knowledge of Salesforce, kind of figuring out how to solve the problem, right? It's like, I need a way to track whatever, like activity on the contact and have that roll up to the account or whatever, right? You're like, okay, cool. Well, let's put some fields here, roll up this, maybe put in a flow that will do this, and so on and so forth, right? So you kind of design that technical piece to it, whether you then build it yourself. Again, it can be very different. I've been in orgs where I would design it, like I would from start, plan it out, design it, then build it. But in other orgs, you kind of then pass it off and then have a cadence with like the admin or developer to then put that into effect. So yeah, to put a bow on it, a lot of planning, a lot of meetings, not very much selling, I don't think. And yeah, that's mostly my day to day. A lot of talking.
More operations than sales,
Yes,
right?
yes.
But I hear the relationship aspect of selling, internal stakeholders. You're building trust, obviously, with the executives and the front line, and trying to understand each other's each role to better give advice or have the solution.
That's it. It's very
developed.
hybrid in the sense that, like, yes, you are maybe technical, you know a lot about Salesforce, but it's like you also have to know a lot about the business and dig in as much as possible.
So do you also do the quotings part of the sales process, or do you do things like inside sales and things like that? I'm kind of curious to see.
The nitty gritty. So I have, very quickly, when you have one person doing everything, things can fall apart, obviously. I think usually an operations person, because my title is like, what is it? Sales operations manager or whatever, right? Like typically you build the team that would handle this kind of stuff, right? I would think if you're the person who's like in charge of, quote approvals and generating and that kind of stuff, contract negotiations, you're more on the analyst side of things, and that should probably be just your role, especially if like the frequency is there. But yeah, typically in this kind of field, it's you oversee like anything that needs to be done on the operations of that end-to-end life cycle, right? The key term is the end-to-end from start to finish. I think where most value of a role like this would add is ideally making it so like a process can do some of this stuff, right? Like whether it's, hey, a quote's here, all right, let's set up a flow or whatever where it notifies the VP or the director of sales, have them approve it. Like you figure out what approval process you need, right? Ideally, if like a contract needs to be negotiated, okay, well, let's design a process that, a legal person on the team hopefully can get notified and jump on that. So ideally, you're designing the process to make that more automated or easy where possible, but otherwise you're probably working very closely with an individual like an analyst or something that's working on that specific piece.
Speaking of analysts,
Ooh.
we have a question here from Lisa. I'd say that because Lisa just earned a
analyst
analyst certification with Salesforce.
Congrats on that. That's amazing.
Well, thank you so much. And it's funny you brought it up because as you were describing what you do in a day-to-day, it actually very closely aligns with Salesforce BA certification.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all about business process mapping and things like that. What I'm curious more, it's maybe like a very specific question.
Yep.
To me, it almost seems like your role is somewhere in between like that ops coordinator and administration, plus with a bit of BA looped into it. I have also seen sometimes companies have like a sales engineering role.
Yes.
So then other than just being more about processes, the role is focused around, okay, like you guys, the goal is to penetrate this market. What are we going to do in order to penetrate this market?
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell me a bit more about how has it played out from your experience? Have you ever had to take on that sales engineering role? And if there's like a general delineation between sales operations and sales engineering?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's kind of what I mentioned earlier about like how it can be so much. Because you're right, like a role in this field could very well be like you act as a sales engineer, which in my experience has been typically like an individual who maybe does demos and things like that. But I could see like someone being more on the marketing growth side, which is what you kind of described there. I haven't been too much in the weeds because I've always worked with teams that like, or companies that had like a robust marketing team or a robust team where like the term in terms of like giving the reps work to do is already sort of in place. It's just you're there to make that easier for them or more efficient in that respect. But I have been asked like opinions about like, hey, what's the best way of like targeting our ICB, right? Our ideal customer profile. What do you recommend? Here's what we do today. It's like, cool. Have you looked into, using like a Zoom info to enrich some of our accounts or like a LinkedIn sales navigator to pull in some contacts that have this job title, right? So, based on your experience and like, it's kind of lucky for me because I've been in SaaS for a while. Like a lot of this stuff follows the same pattern, the same problems need the same solutions sometimes. It's more like they'll ask you for your opinion. Ideally, hopefully you have like a VP or director who's like pretty knowledgeable about this stuff. Because again, very quickly, like you'll fall in the path of you do everything for everyone all the time. And that's just like, you're probably not the best person to do everything, right? So to answer your question, like I haven't really done too much of that, but worked very closely with people who have, yeah.
Sounds like setting boundaries is something you've got to work on.
Oh, so important.
Right?
For everyone.
Yeah, and I just remember in sales being asked to, play an account receivable role.
Right.
That's taking away from my sales activity, but it was lumped into the sales role, right? So that took a lot of time, and I could kind of relate from a from kind of spreading yourself a bit too thin.
Right.
So I'm assuming you have those deep thoughts on what to say yes to, what to say no to.
Well, and that's why it's very important what I mentioned earlier about like, hey, like figure out exactly what they want from you. Because again, it's like he's the operations guy. Like get him to do it. It's like cool, but it's like, you know, you're not adding value where you want to be adding value, right? It can very quickly expand because it's like, again, a catch-all to do everything, right? So yeah, you want to be careful about like setting up like where your strengths lie and make sure, like in this case, right? Like my background is Salesforce, like this is what I know. You know, I can do a pretty good job at like talking to your account executives or BDRs and figuring out where their pain points are and making the sales process smoother, right? So like, let's do that as opposed to like, you know, fishing for leads or whatever. You know?
We have a question online. Graham, do they want to ask the question, or is that who wants to ask the question? Is it typed in, or do they? Okay, Susan, do you want us to just ask it, or do you want to ask it? Is Susan still there? Let's see. Sorry to put you on the spot. She might not be there anymore. Oh, there you are.
I'm just trying to figure out where my audio is.
Yeah. Hi, Susan. Yeah, we can hear you. So you want to just ask your question?
Sure. I was just, you reminded me of a couple of things, a lot of things. I agree with many of the things you are saying. And we're in kind of a recession sort of time now, as we know, in SaaS. There's a lot of, damage going on, actually. Do you have any tips for this? When would you agree to create a process in Salesforce that can be, fairly involved, and unique to the company and all these kind of things? If you know that there's a tool that does that and they say, well, can we just create one for free? I've got that in quotes. Could you just do this? And that just creates a whole lot of technical debt in the CRM and, problems later on. I think I know what you're going to say. You kind of have to align with leadership and make them understand that that's what the collateral is. But do you have any tips for kind of, or when you say, no, you really need to just buy the tool you should buy?
Yeah, thanks for that, Susan. That's a great question, and I'm laughing because, man, I've been in that situation so many times. Yeah, so kind of what you said, yes, like try to align the business and stuff like that. Sometimes you got to have just a discussion about like, what's my time worth, right? And I've had this discussion of like, listen, buddy, you're paying me X dollars, right? Like, and you mentioned technical debt and all this kind of stuff, right? Like you can have this tool, right? And sometimes you even need to maybe like write it down factually. Like, here's the time it would take for me to build this process, right? And maybe add on a couple months because like, it always takes longer than we think. Here's what's involved with sort of the upkeep of that, right? And here's where like it's gonna fall short from like tool XYZ, right? Because it's, Salesforce is good in the sense of like, they have other products like CPQ and this and that. So you're probably not going to design a CPQ equivalent that's as elegant. Obviously, there's a big price difference there, but I digress. So I think it would just like show the math. And maybe you don't need to get into like the nitty gritty of like my time is worth X, Y, Z, but just go into the math of like here's kind of like the sort of cost, quote unquote, of the time it would take for me to build this, to support it, especially once you start involving other team members, like, okay, and then this person or this team needs to then do this and that and da. Whereas it's like, here's the package with whatever sort of tool or integration. It's this much a month, try to negotiate maybe a deal. I find usually they'll jump on it if you're like, we get 5% off if we sign now. I think sometimes just have that tough conversation in addition to trying to get aligned and whatnot. Because sometimes it's going to be quicker, it's better. And Salesforce just can't do some stuff. Like you can't enrich your accounts with Salesforce alone, right?
Mm-hmm. I tend to always come back to, well, all your problems are generally have been had by someone else. And that's the thing about Salesforce is that
right.
People are solving the same problem, and that's why you have a community, and that's what's great about it. And then so to go that path, it's usually the best path, not the special custom thing. It's usually going to cause trouble in the end. So thanks very much.
Yeah, no problem. And actually, just to add to that, I've been in the opposite situation too, where I've worked in an org that's been over-tooled. Like there's way too many tools. Like who hasn't, right? And that's another thing too. It's like, hey, like then you have the opposite conversation of like, let me rip this tool out and let me build this for you. Like I kid you guys not, like warning story. Our layout, I had this one org that I worked in where the page layouts were so bad, they had a tool that just like made it easy for the reps. It's like, you need to fill in these fields at this stage. It's like, give me a week, I'll build that. Like, you know what I mean? Or have the admin build it or whatever. It's like, you just figure out what you need to do and boom, you save whatever it is, $5,000 a year, right? It adds up. And that's,
they know you're going to make a mess and they love to sell you something to fix the mess.
yeah, for sure. Right. It's crazy, but yeah, good point.
So I'm hearing them having as a sales operations professional, having a financial acumen, having an ability to understand the cost of developing compared to the opportunity
Right.
of the new deal or the whatever the process is. Is that something that you found through your experience is having the math, having the math discussion?
You want to be cognizant, right? Nash said it like before the meeting started. Time is money, and man, is that ever true, right? And when you're talking to VPs, execs, and whatnot, they're always going to want to talk about the pipeline and what's closing and this and that, and how can you make that better, right? That's like, you got to hit target, got to hit quota, blah, 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 blah. Sure. So like when you then speak the same language of like, here's the solution, and this is where we get into KPIs and metrics and whatnot, right? But like this solution, to implement is going to cost this, and then might even have some unknowns, right? Like, you could design a process and it could just be you, but it falls short, right? So yeah, try to speak the same language if you can.
Oh, I see it. As I walk over to Nash, I'm
To
thinking
be fair,
about as well.
I think I summoned him, right? Like I think I
Burning
mentioned-
bridges.
Yeah.
Think about some more horror stories too that you've walked into, Mike. I'd like to
I don't know
hear
if I
some
wanna
more
do that.
because I think in many organizations it's an issue, right? So it's trying to figure out how everybody can talk to each other and get on the same page. And
Yeah.
is that something that you find yourself involved with? Are you getting in the mix a lot with maybe teams not speaking to each other when they should be, so that you can do your job?
Right.
And how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's very much so a testament to like sales is here doing this in their corner, marketing is here doing this in their corner, and they all have their own internal motivations and targets. Like marketing cares about the MQLs and their campaigns and return on investment, right? Sales needs to hit quota and so on and so forth. So it's like, hey guys, like you're a team, work together, like hold hands, get in a meeting, let's talk about this, right? Yeah. Nash?
Hey, Mike, great talk. Let's imagine situation.
Mm-hmm.
You work 1 year hard, everything is working, company makes profit. Now your subboard, your managers wants to give bonus out. Everybody get KPIs. Marketing team, sales team, they all have numbers, they know what they are doing. How you measure yourself, your sales operation?
I don't know. Do I get bonuses? Do I get paid to do this? Yeah, no, it's a good question. And that is a challenge because it's like, I'm operations. I'm like the guy on the background, right? Like it's not as easy or straightforward as like you hit your quota or you didn't hit your quota. Cause it's like, you don't have a clear quota, right? So like for me, KPIs and sort of like how I measure success is always a challenge. And in my experience, it's different, like depending on what org you're in. And even what project you're working on, right? So for example, and this is what I mentioned earlier about like tie your shoes, like trying to figure out like what the KPIs are for that particular project, right? And sometimes like I've dug deep into this, right? So for example, a big part of what I like doing is interviewing regularly like the end users, the BDRs, the AEs, or these people. And sometimes I'll ask them just to give me a rating. Hey, this process right now, we're thinking about doing this with it or whatever. Can you tell me today, out of a scale of 1 to 10 or whatever, how you find it? And they'll say 5 or whatever. And you're like, hey, why do you say 5? Well, it takes me like 10 minutes to do this and it's a pain. And sometimes I get this error and blah, 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 blah. Cool. You write that down, make note of it, right? You implement said process or whatever. And then you have the same thing after like a month. Like, hey, now we have this new process. Last time you said it's a 5. How do you find it now? Oh, it's a 8. This is awesome. Da, da, da. But there's still this issue. No, right? So it's like, that is like a number, a KPI or whatever you can roll with, albeit subjective. But you're right, Nash, like there aren't a lot of core sort of objective sort of figures you can roll with. Like you could say, hey, sales hit quota or beat quota by 10% or whatever. That should be attributed to you because in theory, it's like you made some things quicker and more efficient and whatever. So it's like, well, sure, some of the bonus, buddy, right? But at the end of the day, it's hard to say because you're not the one on the ground in the field, like actually closing the deals necessarily, right?
So these are thoughts I would have into negotiating my salary before I start the job.
I think you should. Yeah, why not?
And I'm assuming you've had those thoughts, and then that goes into your discussions too, right?
Yeah, you know what? Like making things up really worked well for me in the past, and it might work well for you guys. But like that's effectively what you're doing. You're kind of like making up a metric, but it's like you're converting a subjective metric into like an actual.
But back to Nash's question, sales ops, is there a it's harder to create an incentive or a bonus for that role? I think that's kind of where you're going with the question. Was that the idea? Yeah.
Yeah, just my comment on, me as technical person, it's similar boat like you.
Right.
I need to oversee. If things fail, I'm guilty. Even I didn't touch it. It's my fault.
Yeah.
On the end, everybody is celebrating, and they forget you were at all in this game. And things like that. It's very hard to to kind of measure yourself and adjust for those times. Another issue that I found through my career was knowledge that you gain by doing your job. It's nowhere, it's you. If you leave, there is big, huge gap after you.
Yep.
How you address this in your job?
Yeah, that's an important one. You got to write stuff down. It's it doesn't always come naturally, and it didn't for me because I was the type of person, how I mentioned I learned to tie my shoes, right, before I ran the marathon, so to speak, right? That never came natural to me. I was never the type of person to like make a grocery list or write things in my calendar or whatever. I very quickly in this kind of career had to, in my opinion, had to become that way. And that's when I kind of realized like slow down so you could speed up, right? Like document everything as much as possible where it makes sense. And in particular, I find visual documentation works really well because you could create like a page and it's got a bunch of paragraphs that explains the sales process or whatever. But man, like you create like, I forget what the tool is called, but there's a bunch of tools where you create, squares and arrows. Lucidchart, there you go. Something like that. And then that way it's easy to tweak because processes are going to change too. And part of my, as a BSA or something like that, right? Part of my like template of when I do a user story or like when I'm drafting up a project, at the very end, I say this process, is this going to involve updating any documentation, right? And that's when you want to take the minute to think, oh, right, we're changing this flow or we're making a change here. That means let's flag this document and this document. It's very challenging to do, but like, in my opinion, something's always better than nothing. And I've been in a lot of situations, I'm sure you guys have as well, where it's like, there's nothing, right? So just put something down, commit something. And it's not just for like the next guy or someone else, but like it's for you as well to go back to and remember. Because I built flows and stuff like that where, 6 months later, it's like, hey, remember that flow you built? This having this error. I'm like, I don't remember what that flow did. You kidding me? And of course, my description sucked. Right? Like, it didn't tell me the details I needed. So, case in point, you like document your stuff.
Slow down
so you
to speed up. I love
Absolutely.
it.
Hi, Mike. You are killing it. Thank you very much.
Sweet.
So your previous answer there about measuring the improvement, kind of prompted another question for me. When you're looking at a net new feature, how do you measure and communicate the business value to really ensure the prioritization and that it gets secured?
Yeah, sure. Yes, especially when it's like not maybe initially like what, because oftentimes I'll be in these discussions and they'll be like, hey, we need to do this thing where we create an opportunity and da-da-da-da. And you're like, whoa, hold on, man. Like, I don't know if that's the best way of going about it because of X, Y, Z. It ties back to speaking the same language, right? And what are the benefits and the value of this? And again, I find it's like always comes back to time. Time is money. And oftentimes when we're doing a process, it's, saving time. Another big thing too is like, especially when we're dealing with like a business SaaS or company or whatever like that, if it's like a process that introduces revenue stream, right? So like that very much so gets leadership excited where it's like, hey, we can do a thing where, for example, in your app, you guys build it out where a current customer could upgrade to a new feature or whatever, and it's going to flag them. cool, we can bring that into Salesforce, notify the account owner of that the user clicked the upgrade, create an opportunity, and here you go, new revenue stream, right? So you want to like speak to the impact of like the benefit of said feature in terms of like time, money, that kind of stuff, but also like if there's any other impact to achieving the overall quota and goals where possible.
Do you find using in that scenario, do you find using a business case, like what's your method of explaining that ROI to the ones that need to say yes to you to move forward? Are you using a mock-up, a demo, or another use case?
Yep. Back to sort of like the visual part of it,
Yeah.
right? Like, yes, demo, things like that. Like, in particular, it's because it's like, okay, the VP of sales works with their sales team. Show them what it looks like for them now, especially if you show them before and after, like, wow, is that an impact, right? What I spoke to about earlier with page layouts, like show them the page layouts before, show them page layout now, look how much cleaner it is, therefore we don't need this tool or whatever, you know? But like a visual representation is key. So ideally you have like a UAT or test environment where you could even like show it as a proof of concept. Reports, right? Because it's like no matter what feature you're doing, whatever you're doing, they always want reports and metrics and dashboards, which obviously makes sense. Show them what that would look like in theory, right? And show them what you can do with that, right? So it's important to obviously like, here are the metrics, here's the thing, here's the process, great. But like now that you have this, right, you can make some informed business decisions. Right? So it's like, hey, we got 100 leads coming in every week requesting upgrades. Oh crap, okay, well, we got to build a team around this or whatever, right? It like informs business decisions based off,
Right.
you know, platform behavior and things like that.
How we doing? Zoom? Thumbs up or one? That's a thumbs up, right? Graham's eating
Thumbs
a
up.
mouthful of pizza
Everyone's
right now.
pleased.
No, we're good. I think, so I wanted to ask a question about just the sales operations role.
Yep.
And what you see in the future for
Yes.
sales ops. I mean, it's kind of a broad question. You can go anywhere you want with it. But, you know, from a personal perspective, you know, you're fairly new in the role,
Yes,
you mentioned.
relatively, yeah.
Right? So where do you see yourself going, maybe from a personal perspective and then maybe more broad?
Yeah. I'm worried that this is going to be like a cop-out answer, and I feel like this is always the answer, but it's AI. And what I mean by that is I've seen some tools and stuff, right, that do some really cool stuff. More so from like how users and salespeople interact with the CRM or Salesforce, right? And like, I'll give you an example. I've worked with this one tool where honestly, it sits there like during a Zoom call and it listens in, it transcribes. And on the side, the sales rep has this like playbook of questions that they're going to ask, you know, discovery call type basic stuff. Then this will take that information and you tell it on the back end, hey, when this rep or whatever, this person mentions a competitor, when they mention things like this, things like that, whatever, automatically populate the opportunity. Because as you guys know, if you yourself have worked with Salesforce being a sales rep or on the operations side, you know, getting reps sometimes to like fill in the information we need is like pulling teeth, and you don't want to force them with validation rules when you don't have to. And obviously having a well fleshed out opportunity record or contact record is really nice. You can do stuff with that, right? This basically completely automates it. So it'll listen to the call. There's a playbook, fills in like certain key details that like you want or need on your records. And then after that, it'll write up a follow-up email that the rep can tweak and then send out. You know, hey, John, as per our discussion, I'll follow up with you in 2 weeks, all this kind of fun stuff. So honestly, it's like AI, you know, I don't know if I subscribe to the boat of like, it's going to take our jobs, but like, I think it's going to make them much more efficient and much better, particularly in like the not so fun stuff. Like you could create an awesome opportunity layout or record layout and an awesome process. You know, sales reps want to sell, like that's how they make their money, right? Like they don't necessarily want to be sitting there, even if it's like 5 minutes instead of 10 minutes a day, futzing with Salesforce, right? So having like these tools, whether they're built in or external, fill that stuff in it's like everyone's happy. I'm happy. Leadership's happy. It's like we got all these opportunities with this information filled out. Yay, we can report on it. Metrics, data, right? So it makes everyone happy. And the reps, they look like hot shots because it's like the tool just does it for them. So anything that can like make that manual process better, right? There's just some things that like you can't necessarily automate. Like when you have a conversation with a person, you can't like automate picking up those key terms and whatnot. But like this particular tool I saw in action did, and I was like blown away by that. And this is like what, V1? Like AI is so new, right?
It's pretty exciting.
Isn't it?
How's everybody doing? Nash?
Yeah.
Okay. We piqued his interest. We've got a few more questions. We have time for a few more questions, then we got to get to,
give her, for sure.
to our prizes soon.
Ooh.
But Nash, thoughts?
I just want to invite everybody else after me to ask questions. But let's say your sales operations at this moment, and it's not your first gig in your career. What young person on beginning of career needs to have as experience to get in situation to choose sales operation as career?
Yeah, that's a great question, and often something I reflect on, because I'm like, some days I wake up, I'm like, how the hell did I end up here? I studied psychology, right? No, and this is, I think, the ecosystem today, right? Because like obviously like Salesforce and you got your BSA certification not long ago, right? It's like there's very much so you go to the website Trailblazer, it's like you can be an admin and your day-to-day is boom, boom, boom. You can be a developer and your day-to-day is this. It's sort of like regimented and like in some ways realistic of like I think today's market. I think today it's like a lot of companies need you to have hybrid skills. Right. And sometimes it's like, I need an admin with advanced certification with CPQ or whatever, Pardot, right? In particular with operations, I think it's another path that one can take. And in this case, it's one where it marries, because obviously you can really much go down in the direction of I'm a developer and I do really technical things and I work in code all day. Like that's awesome. But like you can also go like sort of in the other direction of like, I'm a guy who talks a lot and I'm very curious and I want to solve problems. That's when I think you kind of get into, obviously like admin, that's great because you're like half technical and half problem solver guy, right? But operations is like that step forward where it's like you can kind of take a bit of a step back from the technical piece because maybe there's someone who is more technical that can sort of action some of the things that you build out. But more so it's like, do you enjoy having conversations? Are you curious, right? Do you enjoy solving puzzles? Like sometimes, I walk past someone literally doing a jigsaw puzzle and I look and I'm like, oh, I want to do that too, right? Because you want to sit there and figure it out. Like this is the kind of person that I am and figure out I am, which is why like it checks out that I end up in this kind of role because I study psychology. I am curious about people, right? And in particular, the part about my job that I love the most is like, when I work with a sales rep who has a really crappy process, they don't like their job as much because of this process, and you like make it way better. And what that means is you put on their hat for a day and you say, well, what's this like? Like, what would I enjoy doing? What kind of things would I would take? So for a young person coming in, I would say like, you're technical, sure, Salesforce and some other kind of things. But if that doesn't excite you as much as like digging in and doing the problem solving, the discovery, the solution, the solution design meetings and whatnot. I'd say that's like a good kind of path forward. And I'm seeing a lot of opportunity. And it's all in the same realm. Like when I read job descriptions for sales ops, rev ops, business ops, analysts, it's like the same job, man. It's honestly like, it's really getting muddy these days. I know the scope is different and stuff, but it's almost always the same. So I'd say for anyone who about that, like that's a good.
We do get stuck on titles, don't we?
I know, right? It's semantics at the end.
But sometimes it is kind of the gateway into maybe a new, role that you never knew you'd love, right? And it's something to me, and everybody's going to take this differently. To me, it's great. You're speaking to the choir from a sales perspective. I teach in a sales program. Mm-hmm. We have a new business development and sales grad certificate. Sales operations is definitely going to be a conversation we're going to have in our program. Mm-hmm. So heads up, we'll be asking you to come in and guest speak from a greed perspective here. I'm going to invite you in. Mm-hmm. But it's really interesting to hear your experience, how you've leveraged the psychology background with the tech to kind of move forward with your career. Just looking at the time, folks, anybody? Yep, You're good? Okay, no, Stuart's good. I'm going to thank you, Mike, for this has been a fantastic conversation.
no problem.
Thank you so much. And
Pleasure.
We'll let Mike off the hot seat there. Thank you so much for being with us. This was a great
Thanks, guys.
conversation. Thank you everybody for participating. For the Zoom folks, thanks for being with us. We're just going to do our little riddle game. You can hang out and play. But the prizes will go to the in-persons, the people that are here. So you can just hang out if you like, but we thank you for being with us and participating. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Kiadi. And before we do our closing thank yous, I think that's what's next on the, let's see. No, the thank you is first. So I'm going to thank first Stephen Gagne for allowing us to hang out in his unnecessarily large office. See, his office is way down here, and he's got this big foyer that I always take over. So thank you, the layer. So Stephen Gagne runs the Entrepreneurship Center here among many things. He's a teacher as well as prof. So speaking of profs, we have Adesh here with he's program coordinator for mobile applications. I'm sorry about that. I got it mixed up with project management. And Adesh and myself and Stephen, we're always looking for clients as well. So just keep that in mind if you have projects that you need students to work on. We need real live projects to work on always. So just let us know. Come up to Adesh, raise your hand, Adesh, and Stephen and myself. Always happy to have those conversations. So thank you, Stephen, for hosting Salesblazer. Thanks. We all thank you for being here. So that's the thanks, right? I want to thank Kiadi for volunteering. She's an alumni with our program. So Kiadi is now going to take us into the fun prize portion of the prize draw portion of the event. And then after, please hang out, have pizza, and we can chat more. Okay, so thanks, Kiadi. All yours.
Thank you, Professor Patrick, and thank you everyone for being here. Usually we have some prizes for the giveaway. Usually we distribute them based on who's been actively listening to the previous discussions, but we decided to make it more difficult today. So we decided to do some riddles. So hopefully you guys can guess the answer. Just a few, how do I? Yeah. So just some riddles. They're simple questions. Hopefully you guys can guess the answer. If not, I have a couple prepared. So if nobody guesses the answer correctly, we're gonna skip that one. Also, we have 5 prizes for the giveaway. We might have more riddles prepared, just a heads up. And feel free to shout out the answer out loud. Whoever gets the answer first right gets to choose the prize they like. Thank you. So first riddle, an electric train is headed east. Where does the smoke go? That's the correct answer. Electric train.
Hey, we get surprised.
Yeah, you can choose a prize if you like.
I never do that.
That was a tricky question. I know, right? And I, on purpose, put the picture of the train with the smoke.
Right?
So I guess we're taking a hoodie or a shirt. I can skip to the next question in the meantime. So what is in seconds, minutes, centuries, and seasons, but not in years, days, or decades? Take as many guesses as you like. You got the answer right. It's the letter N.
I have an electric car, so I knew the answer to that right.
I guess that's the mug. I've been calling it a mystery box. Okay, I'll take to the next question. What is a word with 5 letters that become shorter when you add 2 letters to it? That's the correct answer. Okay. Okay, I'm at the beginning of everything, yet I'm also at the end of everywhere. I start eternity, but end time and space. What am I? That's the correct answer. We got a really intelligent bunch. I was thinking they might be tricky. You can, Lisa, you can answer. Perfect. We got 2 prizes left, I think. I lose my head in the morning and get it back at night. Any guesses? Sorry? You guys can take as many guesses as you like. There's no wrong, there are wrong answers, but you can participate. There's no losing points for the, a hint maybe? So it has to do with sleeping. It's a pillow. So, okay, I'm gonna skip to the next question. There's 1 of me in every corner, but 2 of me in every room. What am I? A hint? It's a letter. Letter O. In every corner, but 2, yeah. Yes, we have another riddle, I believe. Yeah. What do you break if you speak in time? I think we might have 1 more prepared, so you can let us know the answer. That is correct. Don't be shy. I think we have 1 more, but there are no prizes, so yeah. What has 6 faces and 21 eyes but cannot see? Dice. Professors? That is the correct answer. And that should be it for the riddles. I'll thank you again for joining us. And then we have, just for the net connecting with each other, some icebreaker questions. So I want you all to like find 2 people that you haven't met before and get started with these icebreaker questions. Start with, if you didn't have to sleep, what would you do with extra 8 hours in the day? I would probably start with Adobe. I really like that whole space, but it's so much learning there. So I guess do that. If we could live someplace else for a year, where would it be? For me, I guess it depends on the situation. Are they covering the cost? So I'd probably take Japan, but if I would have to cover costs, then maybe go back to my hometown. And what's something you couldn't live without? So we can start connecting, and feel free to grab the pizza. We have so much left.
Thanks again for being here today.
Thank you.